And then we still have Mike Cookie joining us. And Mike, talking about this incident, now there's something I'll just read out to you. The NIFU directed the states that the states and local government joint accounts should use only for receiving funds and subsequently transferring them to local government accounts only. And also the guidelines reduced cash withdrawals from local government accounts to 500,000 naira daily. Immediately after the guidelines came into place, most local governments across the country stopped facing challenges in the payment of staff salaries. Now, this is a report I just read out to you, but according to this report, the federal government winning against this ruling, do you think it's a step in the right direction?
Okay, when we heard the news, so many persons were celebrating it. Well, it's a good thing on one hand, but again, we will be waiting to see the implementation of this ruling, because there have been instances where there have been such rulings and government does not deem it fit to want to implement such rulings. So while on one hand it's something that is commendable, on the other hand we are also waiting with bated breath to see the implementation. It might be good in the long run if even the governors would also choose to want to implement and allow the local government to actually be autonomous on their own, which is the intent of this ruling. But some of us, we emphasize that it might not just be a smooth flow, because there might still be strong interferences from the governors.
But then, if there's a court ruling, there should there even be strong interferences in the first place? Because the judicial system should be obeyed.
Yeah. So that's exactly the pain that we are struck with. It's a court ruling. How many times have we seen government officials obeying court rulings?
It's not supposed to be. It shouldn't be at all.
Yes, it shouldn't be. Unfortunately, that's the reality that we are faced with. Okay, so for some of us, we are not so excited about this ruling, because eventually the governors have emasculated the local government and the local government councils and their chairmen, to the point that they have no breath or no say of their own. So I will not be surprised that even when this happens, you still see that the governors, they will still be calling the shots, and they'll still be controlling the local government, especially when they are in the same party, because these governors, they also determine who becomes a local government chairman.
Okay, let's look at the background to this. As for a nation practicing federalism, well, that should be practicing federalism, how did we even find ourselves in a situation whereby the local government, which is one of the tiers of governments, isn't even autonomous in the first place? Why are the state governments all about subjugating the local government under their care and order, so to speak?
Yeah, so that is exactly what some of us we are advocating for, true federalism and restructuring of this nation, because that's the only way that the people will really have the benefits of good governance. Unfortunately, that's not what we are having at the moment. Okay, so we see a situation where every party that is in charge in a state, the one who ensure that the governor want to ensure that the local government chairman, they install them, they are under their wings, and they dictate, which is not supposed to be. Now, back then, there used to be a body called the ARGON. ARGON is an association of all local government chairmen of Nigeria. It used to be a very formidable body back then. But you see, it has been caught up also in the politics of the day. They have been bought they've lost their voices in it. ARGON used to champion and advocate for the local government. But unfortunately, politicians will always be politicians. The governors now they are virtually running the reins, of this country. And until we go back to true federalism, until the system is completely decentralized,
yes,
we will still be in this quagmire.
Well, how much of a possibility is it right now? Because one of the bills that was amended by the National Assembly and transmitted to 36 states houses of assembly has to do with the local governments, being fully autonomous. Now, that was less than a month ago when the National Assembly transmitted that it's part of, some bills that were amended from the 1999 Constitution. But we know quite well that for that to pass into law, the 36 state houses of assembly, two-thirds need, to also revert back in accordance to what the National Assembly has done before it's transmitted to the president for signing. We know the whole process. My question is, at the state level, where governors have a considerable amount of control over, their state houses of assembly, do you think the state governors will allow that particular law or bill rather pass?
Definitely, I don't see them allowing it to pass, because they sure want to be in charge. They want to continue. They just want the status quo to remain. All right. So the governors definitely are not going to be in support of that, and that's why it behooves on the National Assembly to be able to put its feet down and ensure that this thing is done. Some persons have advocated for a complete total haul of the Constitution, because the actual treatment to this plague is in the Constitution.
But that's what, sorry to butt in, but that's what the National Assembly has done. When you talk about putting their foot down, they've amended that bill to ensure that the local governments have full autonomy in every aspect, including financially. So it's now left to the state houses of assembly to ensure that they, toe the same line.
So the National Assembly, it doesn't just start and end at amendments. There is a process.
Yes.
Okay. There are subcommittees in the National Assembly that have oversight functions over this, and the National Assembly are supposed to inaugurate those committees. Those committees are supposed to go around the 36 states of the Federation. Okay, ensuring that having sessions with the
state houses of assembly.
Yes, having sessions with the state houses of assembly, having different town hall meetings to ensure that this bill, flies, and getting their buy-in and their consensus. So that's the process. And until that process is being achieved, it's not enough to say that you have amended the bill just at the sitting there, and you think that it will just fly. No. It doesn't work that way.
I know. That's why I asked, sorry please, that's why I asked that for we know quite well that state governors have, a considerable amount of control over their state houses of assembly in terms of lawmakers and what have you. If it fails to pass at state houses of assembly, how then does it become, gets transmitted back to the National Assembly, for onward transmission to the president?
So, yeah, the governors definitely they have that control there. So when you hit such a roadblock, I think sometimes that's where the judiciary could come in. If the National Assembly thinks that the governors are standing in the way of the progress on this, they will definitely want to, that law has to be, given full interpretation and given an expression. Here the judiciary, the judiciary, they can as well go to court if they think that the governors are on the pathway on trying to have this implemented fully. They have to go to court, let it be interpreted, because again, I still bring it back to where the body Argon, this is where Argon would have been very effective if they know what they are doing. They would have cashed in on this opportunity and ensure that they galvanize their members across the length and breadth of the nation to see that this actually flies.
Okay, now
it's all politics again.
Now, the local governments have a lot of power embedded inside of them. They have a lot of power that they are even yet to showcase. So why do you think the governors are or would stand in the way of making this, of course, of this bill, just so it's not actualized?
Margaret, so it's just like the normal saying of he that pays the piper takes the tune, right? So you have most local government chairmen that were controlled into office by their governors, their sitting governors, and when that happens, you have automatically given out or sold out your own independency. You don't have a voice of your own anymore. Exactly how your colleague put it, that when the governors call this local government chairman or ask them not to assent or cooperate for the survival of this process, they will just fall in line. But it ought not to be so. And until the restructuring of this country is taken seriously, we will keep having this issue. And it's not just particular to the local government alone. Even among the 3 tiers of governance, you still see this thing still playing out there, where the executives see themselves as superior over the 2 other arms of government.
Okay, now I asked that particular. All right, I asked this particular question to ask this. Now, earlier, I'll take you back to one of my first questions when you just came up about the judicial system, which is supposed to be the hope of the, I don't want to use the word common man, but then really the hope of everybody, irrespective of your societal class, status, or what have you. So if the judicial system can give orders and the orders are flouted and not even put into consideration, would you say it's a case of restructuring? Because the judicial system should be a strong force of its own. So if they give orders and the governors can stand the way of the orders, then why is there a judicial system in the first place?
Yes, that's it's really an unfortunate situation. It's the executive has really emasculated the 2 arms of government, because presently, as we speak, the judiciary itself, they are not even completely, they are not autonomous in its own self. They wait for their fundings are derived from the executive. Okay, so where a judicial officer or a judge gives a wrong ruling or gives a judgment that is not in consonance with the executive, there will be a payback. Their funds will be withheld. You need to go to some of the courts across the land and see what is happening. Most courts are without the basic amenities that they needed to function. In some cases, there are no lights. In some cases, they are still writing on manual scripts. Judgments are being scripted manually in this day and age. Okay, so when you have such kind of a situation, you discover that it's almost a problem. So how can the judiciary be completely autonomous when they are dependent on their source of funding is dependent from the executive?
So if you say total restructuring of the country, don't you think restructuring should start with different factions other than a total restructuring of Nigeria?
So the restructuring is actually the way to go, because it's a bottom top approach. Okay, when the local government is completely autonomous, the source their revenues are generated and they pay percentage to the center, and it goes up that way to the region, and at the region it goes to the center, because the center is so powerful. And that's why there is a strong craving for the center. But the moment the center is being decentralized and they lose its power, there's so much power that it's amassed at the moment, you discover that things will virtually begin to flow seamlessly, where judges will have the courage to want to deliver judgment in line with their conscience, and not because of political gains and political inducement.
All right, and that's a good place to wrap up this segment. Thank you so much, Mike Cookie, for your contribution on the show today. We appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
All right. That was Mike Cookie joining us from Port Harcourt over the phone. We'll take a short break now. When we come back, we have another segment, which is the morning motivation segment for you today. Please stay tuned.